Hello and welcome. This is Shelley Carpati, writer and host of the Spicy Soul Mama podcast. On this show, we delve into how we connect to our spiritual lives for authentic living. I am bringing authentic, sometimes raw, and compassionate conversations for insight into our universal truths and what is required to heal ourselves and the world. In a world that is so often chaotic and overwhelming, I hope these conversations will spark curiosity and plant tiny seeds of awareness so that we might all collectively learn, grow, and remember our humanity and interconnectedness. And don't forget to find me on Substack. Download the app right now and subscribe for updates at Spicy Soul Mama. Welcome to the Spicy Soul Mama podcast. Dr. Connie Corley, my dear friend, who has a long history of teaching and research in the fields of aging and in social work. Professor Emerita at Fielding Graduate University and California State University, Los Angeles, she is balancing continued writing about resilience and creativity while engaging in new interests, including playing the harmonium and samba dancing. She's also won some really amazing awards like Distinguished Woman, Empathy in Teaching, and Leadership in Gerontological Social. Forgive me for not being able to say that word very well.
Not a problem.
She so Dr. Connie Corley has so much fun and always creating new passions and adventures for her to go on. So welcome, my dear friend Connie.
Thank you, Shelley. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation.
Oh, it's so amazing. I mean, we have bonded over many years. We met years ago at a Ram Dass retreat on Maui. And we just hit it off right away. And I guess it could, we're really part of our spiritual family. And we talked a lot about motherhood, and I would love to learn how motherhood has informed and influenced your spiritual practices and growth.
It's an interesting journey to reflect on how I became, if you will, re-engaged with spiritual life. So I grew up in a very, very religious family, 12 years at Catholic school. And then when I went to graduate school to study social work and psychology at the University of Michigan, I found that a lot of my colleagues were Jewish and kind of had this longing for especially the rituals and the languaging. When I grew up, it was in Latin, and I loved hearing the Hebrew and so on. And now I chant Hindu mantras. But I think that when I got into my sort of professional life and being a mother and trying to do it all and so on, when I was going through divorce in the late 1990s, it became very clear to me that the external elements of success. I mean, first of all, a divorce, especially having been raised Catholic, is kind of like, something you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to stay married and so on and so forth, but that clearly wasn't going to happen. And so the part of me that wanted to still have at least some upbringing for my daughters. I have two daughters, and so I had converted to Judaism and so on. But I was finding that the aspects, the formal aspects of religion weren't really helping me at
Mm,
the time. And so
mhm.
I had been a meditator. In fact, meditation to me was more like taking a nap in the afternoon. So I realized that I needed support. I needed to be in community. And so I started finding meditation groups like through the Thich Nhat Hanh. He's deceased now, but
Yeah.
influential Vietnamese Zen, also Catholic meditator. And so I would go to groups and meditate and so on. And I really think that meditation, for one thing, was just a powerful approach because being a mother, being a mentor, a professor, I was very dedicated to my work and my
Mhm.
students. I still see people from over 20 years ago who are in classes or doing projects with me from my academic life. And but I knew it was important to also be very present as a mother. So I would say meditation was one
Yeah.
aspect to sort of shore me up and to give me really it was like an energy that allowed me to stay present as a mother, to connect with other people, and ultimately I think from spiritual practices and learning from spiritual teachers like Carolyn Mace and the power of really going inward, but also using that inner energy to if you will, like inform. So as a mother, instead of
Hmm.
feeling, strung out and distraught, I could allow myself to just be in the moment and to be present with my daughters.
Yeah, it really helps you like to tap into the well of patience and empathy and kindness. Like you're really dropping into your body and your heart space as opposed to like, and also, being a single mom, I would think that it would also be hard to keep going there because, it's you probably were always wanting to protect your children, your daughters, and we need our egos to protect our kids, and and so it sounds like you really worked hard to achieve that balance between ego and protection and all those things, and also being present with them, tapping into that deep well of compassion.
Yes, and also um, uh, my daughters during that time were pre-adolescent and adolescent, and this is such a challenging time. And I was teaching human development, so I know all these things
Wow.
in theory, but when you're really living uh,
Yeah.
moment to moment, having to make spontaneous decisions, and also being an advocate when children have a disability, and it becomes
Hmm.
important to be able to stand up and protect their rights. It
Hmm.
takes a lot to do that, and I found that the spiritual practices really helped me through this period of time.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think we have a similar entry point also. I know Tina Han is one of yours, but Wayne Dyer seems to be one of your entry points as well. Like, and for me, my son was 2, and I would wake up at 3 a.m. and he was on PBS pacing the stage. Like, and this happened for a period of like many nights.
Mm.
That I would wake up around that time and watch him, pacing the stage, talking about the power of intention and and talking about St. Francis of Assisi. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, and why am I like so captivated? What was it for you about Wayne Dyer that captivated
Well,
you?
it's interesting how I came across Wayne Dyer again this period of my life, and I was driving one of my daughters to and from a school one day a week when she didn't have other transportation. So I needed things to listen to, and I'd go to the library and I don't know how I came across Wayne Dyer. Of course, Wayne Dyer came to me, right?
Right, right.
And I remember the first memory of being struck by what he said was he talked about being in foster homes and so on. And
Hmm.
school, they called him, he thought the teacher was saying a scurvy elephant, but the teacher was calling him a disturbing element. And that just, I don't
I
know,
remember
I started
that.
finding his books, and before you know it, years later, well, not that many years later, but after I came to California and discovered that he would be coming to Hay House events, so I actually had a chance to talk to him like for 2 seconds twice.
Oh, amazing.
I just was very much inspired, and he was also a parent, and
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
went through a disruption in a marriage and so on and so forth. So I felt like I could
Yeah.
relate to his experiences and also be empowered by his
Yes.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And of course, like then we later find out that yeah, that Ram Dass was his teacher. So all paths always end up leading back to him. So but I know so tell me, I know what you're doing now. You're all about conscious aging. And so I would love to, I know that you're really into discovering new horizons for understanding midlife and aging growth and development. And there's so many advances in neuroscience. And also, like this, of course, ageism and, stereotypes. So, like, maybe we could talk a little bit about what conscious aging means to you.
Yes. Well, I had been ever since I started graduate school. I was 22 years old and I had been working with children and I thought I would, study child development. And I heard the word gerontology. I know it's a hard word. And Siri still doesn't know how to spell gerontology or gerontological. So I always have to correct those
Yeah.
when I try to dictate. So I heard this word and I said, well, that's fascinating. And this was in the mid 1970s. I mean, the field really just started as a like with organizations devoted to aging like
Mm.
in the 1950s. So here I was 22 years old and now
Wow.
in my 70s, and it's been my path for my career, but also now kind of embracing and embodying it. And I came across Ram Dass's work on aging. He was writing a book when he had a stroke, and
Hmm.
the book turned out he called it Still Here because we know about Be Here Now, but this book was called Still Here. And at that time, I was doing a radio show on KPFK, Pacifica Station in Los Angeles, KPFK FM. And I wanted to, I just, someone reintroduced me to his work.
Hmm.
And a book called How Can I Help? And I just felt like I needed to interview him. So I, through various ways, got in touch with the people who coordinated his interviews. And they sent me an article that was being published called Content to Be. And it was about his approach to aging, conscious aging.
Hmm.
That's when I learned about conscious aging,
Wow.
how to live with all the things that can happen. He had actually had a fall and he was in the hospital and he talked about, you know, he's the patient and the practitioners are taking care of him. But he said, we are not our roles. I'm not patient and they're, nurse or doctor said, we are souls. So we're all in this together. And that was so powerful. And I brought that in
Mm.
teaching. And now it really makes a lot of sense to me also, living into the recognition that the body does change and that the soul aspect of conscious aging and bringing really the spiritual element, because a lot of social science and even interdisciplinary work is very focused more on, concrete kind of medical, social, psychological.
Right.
Spiritual aspect is, as I think, grows even more important as people grow older.
Yeah, so how can yeah, so it's really interesting. Like, I mean, we want to learn by doing, but how would you convince, someone who's aging and they're going through all this like turmoil and their body's changing and they might have ailments and like what approach would you take to say, hey, like I know you're taking care of your physical body and that's so important, but let's do some soul work together. Is that something that you want to help people start doing or
Absolutely.
yeah.
And um, it really starts before people get older. What I find,
Hmm.
especially midlife, okay, many of us have heard this phrase midlife crisis, and um, it's been really largely debunked. But that doesn't mean that people aren't starting to recognize that something else in life besides the striving, which is what I was talking about before
Yeah.
I started getting into more spiritual pursuits. So if somebody is in a particular, might be a health crisis or a loss, I meet so many people who've lost a partner and suddenly their own mortality comes into the forefront. And
Yeah.
so some of it is about being comfortable with knowing that death is inevitable. And
Yes.
we often think of that as, that's going to happen later or I'll get sick and die. But any at any moment, that's a hard thing to grasp and
Hmm.
even talk about. Most people, we live in a culture and largely other cultures in the world where death is something we don't want to talk about. And
Yeah.
it's it's
It's
really rich.
eminent.
Yes, it's not only imminent, but um with death and destruction being sadly so much around us in the world, uh, coming into a relationship with those experiences of some of it's practical, just being prepared, making sure that things are in order so that the people who are behind, in the still living in the world can live more easily knowing that they don't have, a chaotic situation to have to
Hmm.
take care of. And I've been thinking a lot about Mirabai Bush, who wrote with Ram Dass, Walking Each Other Home.
Yes.
And, she because Ram Dass, of course, has passed away, but I've done some interviews with Mirabai Bush, and
Mm-hmm.
we talked about how the process of having these conversations with Ram Dass, who was very comfortable talking about dying, not only because of work he had done with dying people during the AIDS crisis and then his own mortality and pending death over the last few years of his life when they were writing this book, but bringing it more into conversation. So that's kind of the mortality end of conscious aging. But also, I think part of conscious aging is to be aware of how age is a construct, just like
Yeah.
even gender and so on. These are things that labels people create. That's how we sort of make our world, tangible. But how to
Yes.
transcend labels, and
Yes.
I think that that's also important. And there is research that shows that people who are more positive about aging live longer. And
Yes.
so it's nice that I've been able to study all these things and put them into practice. So I guess
I
I
know.
try myself to embody some of this and kind of open the door to conversations with people and also hopefully be coaching people in this arena as well.
Yeah, that's so excellent. Well, that's like the perfect transition because I know that you're starting to, work on some coaching with colorful Connie creations and working on resilience. And so tell us about your coaching, budding coaching business.
Yes, well, some of it started with being, if you will, kind of a mentor, or as one of my friends and colleagues calls me, her retirement doula. And when she
Nice.
told me that was how she sees me, I thought, well, doula, I looked it up, right? Because isn't that when you bring people
For
in the
birth. Yeah.
childbirth or death doulas and so on? And I said,
Right.
it really is a birth and a death. And
Hmm.
so, having retired myself over the last few years and realizing that it's a transition that is, it's not something that just happens. Okay. I mean, I wanted to say I am retired, and yet as an academic person, I still had some commitments with students and so on, which have all been complete. And then I thought, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing scholarly writing. I'm going to go out and, I still haven't started playing pickleball. It's still
Right.
on my list, but other things that I hadn't devoted as much time to, like playing music and so on. And so
Yeah.
would like to be able to do, and as I'm building my, I have a website now and now planning my outreach, is to help people look at growing into this phase of their life, whether it's their planning retirement or navigating a transition. It might be, as I mentioned, people losing a spouse or a parent they've been
Mm.
a caregiver for years, and suddenly there's this sort of, if you will, like a gap in their life, whether it's
Yeah.
the job isn't there anymore, or empty nest,
Parents.
children have moved out, or
Hmm.
other things happen in their lives. So it's like bringing the focus back to what is most important in life,
Yeah.
prepared, being prepared for what you can accomplish, but also what you have no control over, and how to kind of bring in that spiritual element, which I don't see happening a lot in the coaching, especially around these topics, age,
Yeah. It's
retirement.
so true. It's so true because it's such a beautiful time to like when we're doers and we keep going and going, and then suddenly if like, your ailing parent passes, it's like, okay, then there's this like gap. It's like, what do you do? Do you fill the time with, activities, or do you fill it with, quiet time, soulful time to get back to like, oh, what do I want again? Like, who am I again? It's almost like you have
Absolutely.
to, all these transitions brings us back to that question, who am I and what do I want and what is my essence?
Absolutely. And then circling back to conscious aging and Ram Dass, who says, we are not our roles, we are souls. And uh, he would talk about becoming nobody. And I
Hmm.
tell you, as somebody who had um, some leadership roles in my academic career, to be nobody, it's not easy. It's something,
No.
it's ironically, it's something you have to do. You have to work at
Yeah.
not being who you were. And
Yes.
um, at the same time, it's very liberating, just as if one is a caregiver, we talked about Ram Dass saying, we're not the role, we're our soul. But what does it mean to have had this experience of whether it's, working, parenting, caregiving, etc., and those activities have now diminished or shifted.
Yes.
And then what is the opportunity, the invitation to explore the aspects of one's own life that were never there? So like circling back to music, I always loved music. I was in, the choir. That was one of the good, memories of my many years in Catholic schools was, singing at funerals and weddings and special times of the year. And I just, I love to sing and I love music from different cultures and so on.
Yes.
Picking up different instruments, harmonium. I'm also in a samba band, a samba percussion band.
Nice.
So, and they encourage us to learn different instruments. So I have some different kinds of percussive instruments and so on. And so the opportunity when, the job is not there, my daughters both live out of state,
Hmm.
they're both deceased. And so, and my students are all finished. So it's like,
Yeah. So it's,
whoa, like, what does this mean for me?
yeah, look at what it's opened up and all these wonderful things, these joys that have been dormant that now get to come back. And so I think anybody who gets to work with you will be in such wonderful hands. I loved talking to you. So tell us like where we can find you. What's your website?
Okay, it's Connie Corley online and the HTTP, et
Of
cetera.
course.
And that's the coaching site. There's also a site that's just conniecorleyphd.org, which is more of just a holding space where I want to have more content of things that I've written. There are some of my writings on the Connie Corley online. Uh,
Okay.
some of them are about aging, and some of them are about projects that I've been involved in, and also
Okay.
interviews people have done with me. And this interview will go on there too.
Yeah, great.
And some words from people who have known me and or worked with me, so people can understand a little bit more about who I am and what roles I have played in their life. But my goal is to really work with people who are going through transitions, who want to continue to be growing and developing and to enhance their resilience. And that's where this piece on resilience, I'm sort of it's woven through a lot of my work, and now I'm coming back into that and discerning how I can continue to do that when I thought I wasn't going to do any more writing, but I feel
Yeah.
to do this again.
Wonderful. So, everyone, please go to conniecorleyonline.com to find out about how, conscious aging and finding resilience through transitions. So, thank you so much for coming today, and it was lovely to speak with you.
Yes, same here, Shelley. Thank you so much.